Hi all, I'm making this video because I want to. I don't really do videos. I've thought about doing a regular video channel, but I don't. But this is something that I was just talking to somebody and I felt so strongly about that I said, let me shoot it as a video and share it. One of the problems, well, there are many problems with this country, but one of the main problems right now affecting all of us is the fact that we've gotten to a place where we have debate, and debate is a good thing, but debate is only useful when you have people who are willing to meet, to come to some kind of consensus in the middle. Otherwise, debate is pointless. For 50 years, the conservative right has been willing to compromise. Granted, not easily. They fought different measures, but ultimately, the left from 50 years ago, from 40 years ago, from 30 years ago, has gotten a lot of what it wanted. We compromised on the right. And but it's never enough. And now it's still not enough. In the 1960s, Martin Luther King Jr. peacefully marched, helped get civil rights legislation passed, ended segregation in the South. And yet, still today, there are people who scream that there's systemic racism against blacks. We have gay marriage, we have gay adoption, we have all sorts of Title IX and various other anti discrimination laws on all levels of government that prevent discrimination based on sex, color, gender, if you're homosexual or straight, race, nationality. And yet, these people, mainly on the left, still complain that there's racism, that there's discrimination, that there's sexism. We gave the LGBT community, for example, most of what they wanted. They're equal. They can get married. They can get health care benefits. They can adopt children. And that's how it should be. I'm not one advocating to roll back any of that. However, that's not enough for them. So now they have to push the envelope further. They want to be able to choose their gender and change their birth certificate. They want to be able to allow men wearing women's clothing to use the ladies' room. We've given them the equality, we've given them the fairness, and yet they still push for more. Same thing with the black community. There's no more segregation. There's no more open racism. Oh, yes, other than some stupid white supremacist idiots. But yes, overall, this country has come very, very far since the 1960s, and even farther if you go back further to the pre Civil War. No one in this country, again, except for some white supremacist idiots that are dumb, advocate slavery or segregation. When George Floyd was killed, and when Michael Brown was killed, and when a lot of other black people were killed by the police, not one single white person publicly ever said, good, another dead black guy, so what? Who cares? Not one. Every single person in this country, other than those, again, white supremacist buffoons, those ignorant idiots, but every person in this country grieved and saw the horror that these people didn't deserve to die. Nobody said, oh, so what? Another black guy dead. Who cares? Nobody said that. If this country was as racist as these people are claiming it is, every single time a black person dies by the hand of a white person or a cop, the public reaction would be, who cares? So what? That's not the reaction. That is not the reaction people of all walks of life and background, especially whites, because we're the ones that are racist, right? Blacks aren't racist, we are. Not one single white person said it was a good thing. And not that I'm saying it's okay that those black people were shot by cops. Anybody being shot by a cop is a horrible thing. But they were all, almost in every case, they were had a criminal background. They were career criminals. They were not average, ordinary, good black people just minding their own business, walking down the street, and then the cops accosted them and killed them. Again, that's not me saying that they deserve to die. They didn't. Everybody in this country, regardless of race, color, or creed, or sexual origin, or sexual preference, deserves due process under the law. But you cannot resist arrest, put up a fight, and then when you get hurt or even killed, then claim that there's systemic racism. Not one single white person said in this country anything negative about George Floyd's death. Yet, how did the black community respond? They looted and they rioted and they burned and they pillaged. All in the name of we're protesters, we're angry. This is counterproductive. This is not what Martin Luther King Jr. marched for. This is not what he walked for. Not to pull down statues. I get it. I get it. I get pulling down the Confederate statues. I understand that. I get being upset by the Confederate flag. I understand it. But now they're going after the founding fathers. I mean, when does it stop? Do we just pull down every statue in America if we don't like the person or if the person ever said a negative thing about another race? When do we stop? When do we stop trying to erase our history? When I was growing up, there was a show on TV that was very popular, and it was a good show, and it was actually well written. It was sort of a comedy or sitcom called The Dukes of Hazzard. You couldn't show that show on TV anymore because the car in it had a Confederate flag painted on the roof, and the car was named the General Lee. And the show had nothing to do with racism, the Klan, white supremacy, nothing. It was set in Georgia. Georgia was a Confederate state, and historically, General Lee was the head of the Confederacy, and the flag on the painted on the roof of the car was the Confederate flag of the Army of Northern Virginia. It wasn't even the Confederate flag for the Confederacy, just for the Army of Northern Virginia. And so there's no explanation in the original TV show. They added one in the movie, but in the original TV show, there's no explanation for the car, the flag, and the car being named that. But we could assume, since they grew up and live in Georgia, it was um, honorific, a memorial, a remembrance of history. But you couldn't show that show on TV today. I'm not sure it even is shown on TV today because people would be in uproar over the show. People weren't in an uproar 40 years ago when the show was on. Uh, yeah, 30 years ago, back in the 80s. Oh, I'm offended. I'm offended. You have to pull that flag down. You have to pull that statue down. I'm offended. Well, so fucking what? Grow a thick skin and go on about your business. It's nothing more than a whine. I'm offended. That offends me. You know what offends me? That for 50 years, the right has constantly compromised with the left. We have gay marriage. We have gay adoption. We have Title IX and anti discrimination laws. We have no more segregation. We have laws preventing people from discriminating against housing or employment. Hell, we have affirmative action, which helps minorities get jobs. And yet, this country is still systemically racist. We had a black president for 8 years. Why didn't he fix all this systemic racism that exists? I am just so sick of it and tired of it. And the news media and its enabling of these spoiled children who don't know the history, who don't understand history of our founding fathers and our founding of our country and the struggles that people actually went through to get rid of slavery, to get rid of segregation, to make the country better for them, this country that is so horrible to them. Enough. I've had enough. Not this is why the conservatives have taken the attitude of not one step further. Not 1 inch more are we willing to give because the other side is not willing to give an inch. When Ronald Reagan was president, excuse me, Tip O'Neill, a Democrat and a fairly liberal Democrat at that, got along with Ronald Reagan, a fairly conservative Republican, and they worked together. They came together and they made good law. But now everybody's in their corners and nobody wants to give an inch. And it shouldn't be the right that gives an inch. All you leftists want the right to keep giving. For 50 years, we have been giving. If we didn't give in, you wouldn't have gay marriage, gay adoption, unfettered abortion, anti discrimination laws. There'd still be segregation. The right has been giving in and compromising for 50 to 60 years because it was right to compromise. Those are all good things. And yet it's still not enough for you. You won't be happy until we have socialism. You won't be happy until a person can choose their birth on their birth certificate and dress however they like and get whatever surgeries they want and be identified by her or they or she or whatever these crazy cis things. And you'll never, ever be happy until you get all that. Black people in this country that are part of BLM will never be satisfied. It's no longer about equality. It's about putting the white guys in chains. And what kind of free stuff can we extort from companies and businesses and the white people? What can we get for free? It's no longer about equality and fairness and justice, the things that Martin Luther King Jr. marched for. It's a sad, sad day in this country. It's being ripped apart because people just won't try to work together. And by work together, that means you folks on the left have to give in a little too, not just us on the right. I don't know what the solution is. Maybe we got to fight it out and a lot of people have to die, but it shouldn't come to that. It shouldn't have to come to that, where one side wins everything and the other side dies. There are good things on both sides, both liberal and conservative. There are good points of view and good things. This country is so much better now than it was 50 years ago, 100 years ago, 200 years ago. And yet, it's not enough for you folks. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to tell you. It's a sad day. Thanks for listening to my rant.